team, that's what a nigga get me. P-I-E. Slide for free, kill for the feet. Pull out the seat, then I pull out the ski. Put a motherfucking face on my team, that's what a nigga get me. P-I-E. Slide for free, kill for the feet. Pull out the seat, then I pull out the ski. Put a motherfucking face on my team, that's what a nigga get me.
Like later.
Yeah.
That would be so corny.
That would be.
Okay. I'm Cameron Hörst. I'm a professional climber out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm 22 years old, and this is the story of martial law. Martial law is located at Robber's Roost, which is in Mount Charleston, and Mount Charleston is a climbing area located 30 minutes outside of Las Vegas. A brief history of martial law is there's like 3 stages of how this route came to be. In the late 90s, early 2000s, I'm not totally sure when exactly Arrested Development was bolted. That's like the route that martial law climbs into. So that's like the OG route, the OG hard route in the Roost. And like that's a 14 plus route. And then after that was sent by Ethan Pringle, Andy Raether, and moved to Vegas in like the early 2010s. And he did a lot of establishment at crags across Vegas. And one of the things that he foresaw was that there is this potential line that starts in the back of the cave and kind of climbs out the steepest like arcing point of the cave into Arrested Development. So Andy had the like initial vision of like this direct start of its own that climbs into Arrested Development. But then he didn't really touch that or like pursue that much further than just putting the bolts in. Joe came along years later after he moved to Vegas and kind of did the majority of the work prepping up the climb. Like he moved a couple bolts around and also did a lot of the cleaning that takes place in limestone caves. He made the route climbable how it is today. Because of that, Joe and Andy opened it up to the public to want to try, and like Joe like encouraged me to come down to Vegas in June of this year and like encouraged me to try and see what I thought. And I obviously got super psyched. It fit me really well, and it's kind of like the style that martial law embodies is like a style of climbing that I'm really drawn to.
In a room filled with holographic images. Path is limitless, death, well that's ridiculous. I'ma live forever cause the legend never died. See the world is simple but complex.
Arrested Development kind of contours out from the left and goes through the steep part of the cave and then up into the head wall. And then martial law is a more direct route line out the cave and kind of starts in the very back in this like really dark looking rock and then shoots straight out the steepest part of the cave directly into the crux of Arrested Development. And instead of doing a 512 intro into the crux of Arrested Development on Arrested Development, you kind of start 8 bolts down back in the cave and climb 514 AB out the cave. And the crux of martial law is also the crux of Arrested Development, and there's like this big boulder problem. Like you have like this undercling that you cross under to and then you like twist out of and you're like horizontal and your like body's feeling like it's gonna explode when you're in that position. And then you kind of like launch up to this 2-finger pocket. And for me, it's like a pretty big span move. So that's like the hardest move of the climb. And then you have to like get into that pocket and then like swing your feet out and like clip and then kind of like do a campus move or a few campus moves to get into like another sequence. But like that crux in of itself is like the hardest sequence of the climb, and it's really hard when you come in powered out like on martial law. But since I had already done Arrested Development, I kind of already had that beta worked out.
That shit sound exactly like a groovy hoe. Most dope got you hooked, yelling Rufio. First you lose your mind and you lose your soul.
Over the past 2 years, I've climbed a lot with people like Joe that are like route developers and have route developing mindsets, and I really find that fascinating and intriguing. And so over the course of the last couple of years, and especially the last year, I've been like thinking about like the idea of me pursuing this someday. And it's really cool how I get this experience on like an unknown project. And it was a really cool experience that challenged my mind and opened my mind up in a new way compared to like how I viewed climbing like for all these years in the past.
Sick. Sick.
And it was like a really like personal experience that I had in Vegas, and like it's really cool how like I feel like that was like very monumental to like the way that I see climbing and my relationship with climbing, because of like the climb that I was trying and like a lot of other things that were going on in my life at the time that kind of like all were connected to each other in one way or another. And like it made me like really understand like kind of like who I want to be as like a person and climber, and yeah.
Yes!